the left wing slot, where Arsenal have also made little progress. But it's been reported in recent hours that Nico Williams, it looks like he's heading to Barcelona. That's really gaining traction. Just first of all, how big a blow? I mean, we've spoken so much about Nico Williams, how he'd fit into the system, how he'd be that brilliant left wing upgrade. So if he does go to Barcelona, which looks like it is going to happen now, how big a blow would that be for Arsenal to miss out on what would be a young, exciting, and also affordable target?
Yeah, I think it'd be a blow. I think it would be a blow to Mikel Arteta because Arteta, really likes Nico Williams, and that's where Arsenal's interest has come from. And they just haven't been able to get it over the line. Last season they weren't able to convince him to leave Spain, and this season it seems like it's going to be a familiar story when it comes to that. I think he's always had his heart set on Barcelona. I think that was pretty obvious last summer. Didn't get the move that he wanted then. And it looks like it's probably going to happen now. You can have the link up with Yamal. It's just, I can see why he's going to be doing it. But it is going to be a blow to Arteta, no doubt about it. Arteta wanted Nico Williams, and I think he could see what he could have brought to that left-hand side of the attack. I think there are other options, though. I don't think it's a nightmare for Arsenal. You look around at the moment, there are other options there, whether it be you hold on and see what happens with Rodrigo at Real Madrid after the Club World Cup. Anthony Gordon at Newcastle, a player that, again, we know Arsenal like. Is there a way you can get him out of Newcastle this summer? Is that something Arsenal going to go down? We talk about the Premier League experience that Mikel Arteta likes. Anthony Gordon certainly has that. And I seems to be suggestions that would not be, although it would be difficult, might not be impossible this summer. So I think that could be one maybe to keep an eye on. And then there's players like Rafael Leao who seem to potentially be available if you go out and spend the money. You could get him out of Milan this summer. So I don't think it's a nightmare that Nico Williams has stayed put, or was stayed put in Spain anyway. But I think it's definitely going to be disappointing for Arteta, because I think if you went into his office and you saw the list of sort of 1, 2, 3, 4 of left wingers who were going to be on that, I'm pretty sure Nico Williams would have been top.
Yeah, what you're saying there about Anthony Gordon, that's quite interesting because I saw a report earlier this week, I think it was the Sun, saying that Liverpool are preparing a £100 million offer, which, we'd be very surprised if that came off. And, his name has been mentioned in Arsenal, transfer columns. There's never been a really sort of firm link, but
Mm.
Newcastle are, seems like they're ramping up interest in João Pedro of Brighton, which could, make their current attackers think, okay, what does the future hold for me? And with the likes of Rodrigo, you said in the past that he's someone who's worth paying over the odds for. Is Anthony Gordon in that same category for you? If it took, say, 80 million or 100 million, do you think Arsenal should pay that for Anthony Gordon?
I don't think there's any chance they pay 100 million for Anthony Gordon. No, I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's worth paying good money for. I think he's a very, very good player. He comes with Premier League experience, which obviously would is a plus. You kind of, because you don't have that question mark about will he be able to handle it over here. We know he can handle it over here. He's still young as well. So I think you would have to spend big money to get him out of Newcastle. The fact they're in the Champions League, they're not in any sort of desperate, sort of under any constraints to sell or anything like that. They could quite happily hold on to him. So it would cost big money, about 100 million. That's just not going to happen for me. He's an interesting one, Gordon, because he's obviously signed a contract fairly recently. He was doing really well at Newcastle. He stayed last summer. Liverpool were interested in him then. There was talk that he was quite kind of, swayed by that interest a little bit, but it didn't happen. He stayed. Then he signed the new contract, but then he didn't have the best end to the season at Newcastle. There's a lot of people there sort of questioning his performances and his form and whether maybe his heart was really in it. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him this summer. I'm not saying it's now saying that Arsenal are definitely going to go for him or anything like that, but I think it's definitely one that, as the summer progresses, might be something that we see sort of begin to stir a little bit. What happens, whether it's Arsenal or Liverpool or anyone else. I'm just not 100% convinced maybe that he'll definitely be a Newcastle player at the end of the season.
Yeah, he is
End of
one of the.
summer, sorry.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, I mean, there are a few. He's one of a few alternatives that you mentioned. But just going back to Nico Williams, of course, like you said, he's got that really close relationship with Lamine Yamal. But of course, he and Rafinha enjoyed sensational seasons last term, so you'd imagine that they've made themselves pretty much undroppable, if they can carry on their form like that. Whereas at Arsenal on the left-hand side, if Williams came in, he could maybe expect to push Trossard and, he could maybe expect to become first choice on that side right away. So does it maybe surprise you that he's going to Barcelona where he's got to really fight for his place in the team, whereas if he went to Arsenal, he could become that guaranteed starter straight away?
No, I think the lure of staying in Spain and playing with his friends is obviously very, very strong. I think you look at the Barcelona attack, I mean, Rafinha, amazing season, but he's not getting any younger. Rafinha, Lewandowski's obviously at the very end of his career now, whether you see a situation kind of like we've seen with PSG with Dembele moving up to the central striker, you end up seeing Rafinha playing there maybe, and you've got Williams and Yamal behind him, which is just a scary, scary prospect for any defender. So I'm not overly surprised on it. I think they'll pay him very, very well. You know, if he'd have come over here, he would have almost pretty much been Arsenal's highest paid player as well, which I think it was just never really. That's just not something Arsenal were going to be able to do. You don't bring a 22-year-old in from Spain and make him, put him on more money than Bukayo Saka, for example, or Declan. I mean, that would open up a real can of worms, wage bill style for Arsenal. So I think I kind of look back to last summer as the real opportunity for Arsenal when it came to Nico Williams. I think this summer is always going to be a little bit difficult for him. And yeah, I think it's been pretty obvious that Spain was his most desired destination. Although, but according to some reports, he's fairly open to a move to Bayern Munich as well this summer if Barcelona doesn't pay off. But I think Bayern Munich could certainly be giving him a lot higher wages, and Arsenal would as well.